When they let off oxygen and water, so
Okay.
would also maybe
Why
if
do you
they
say
didn't
no?
let stuff out.
Or why do you say yes?
We wouldn't be alive.
Fair enough.
All learners benefit from opportunities to discuss ideas, but each student has different needs in order to be able to participate successfully. As an effective facilitator of discussions, it's important to pay attention to those needs and to do what you can to keep discussion inclusive. This is particularly important for those who have a pattern of being left out during discussion, or for whom sharing in a group can be more challenging. Ensure discussions are relevant to your students by discussing things that are interesting to them. Try out different questions, and when you find one that captures their interest, run with it.
Do people agree with what he said, that it came from a different tree? Yeah. I'm seeing a bunch of nods.
Show students that you value the cultural assets, prior knowledge, perspectives, experiences, and home language that they bring to the discussion. Learn where your students come from and ask them to share perspectives from their homes and cultures. Welcome and honor different points of view by making a habit of asking, does anyone have a different opinion or perspective?
Okay, so I'm seeing some agreement there. Anyone have a disagreement or a different idea?
Ask your students to be respectful when they listen to each other's ideas. Model how to do this, and point out when students are respectfully acknowledging other points of view. Ask questions that encourage students to bring in experiences and examples from their own lives, allowing them to make connections and to make learning more relevant to their own experience.
Check out your leaf and think about what it reminds you of.
I know some people who, instead of like using they use like animal poop as soil, and they use human poop too.
Oh, so you know of people taking poop and putting it into like compost to make soil and growing things out of it?
Another way to ensure a discussion is relevant to every student in your group is through discussing a common experience the group had together. This ensures that every student has something to contribute and can share about what the experience means to them. In addition to leading discussions about science ideas or environmental issues, try holding discussions after students explore something in nature.
Oh yeah,
maybe and then we found insects. Maybe they made their way in.
Avoid making assumptions about students' gender. Whenever possible, use their names, and when addressing groups of students, use gender-neutral terms such as scientists, friends, people, or a hiking group name that they've come up with.
Come on back. Come on back, party people.
Providing space for students to use the pronouns and names they prefer helps create a positive learning environment for everyone. Help all students realize that they're capable of doing science and that science is an extremely interesting and useful approach to understanding the world. Point out when students are speaking and thinking scientifically to help them recognize scientific practices and scientific language.
Did you notice how politely he disagreed there? Did you also notice that he said he used what we call language of uncertainty?
If we go into the world as good observers and with the mindset that anything can be interesting or cool, there's no end to the amount of stuff that we can discover.
Taking part in discussions about science ideas not only helps students learn how science works, but also how to become better thinkers, inquirers, collaborators, and communicators. Help them understand that the skills needed for science discussion, like basing explanations on evidence, considering the source of information, and disagreeing respectfully, are great life skills for everyone.
The woodpecker maybe poked holes, so maybe it fell because it was wet, and then that allowed the bark beetle to come to the woodpecker's hole and then just start doing tunnels.
Science does not describe the supernatural world or religious beliefs. If students bring up non-scientific beliefs during a science-based discussion, point out that there are different ways of knowing, such as art, religion, and philosophy. Explain that science is a distinct and powerful way of understanding the natural world that is based on evidence. Many indigenous cultures have a deep history of observing and living closely with the natural world that can add evidence to a scientific discussion. Encourage students to use scientific knowledge and language, as well as evidence from their observations and investigations when they're participating in science discussions. African Americans, Latinos, and Native Americans are underrepresented in science careers in general, and especially in environmental science. As instructors, we need to think about how to provide all students with access to engaging experiences with science. It may be important to provide targeted support and encouragement to ensure that all students have a positive experience engaging with nature. Active engagement with science practices, positive, respectful participation with others, along with high expectations and encouragement from the instructor, can help all students form an identity that includes building a strong connection to both science and nature. Research shows that teachers consciously trying to call on equal numbers of boys and girls in discussion can often still call on more boys than girls. It's important to be aware of these tendencies and to try to counteract them. In general, pay particular attention to those who get called on less often. Be aware of your own unconscious favoring of students who raise their hands and speak up quickly.
Alejandra just said that it's rough. Do you agree it's rough?
Yes.
Hey, Kaylee, can you check it out? Does it feel heavy or light?
It feels kind of light, actually.
Don't always require participation from everyone, but gently encourage it. Let students know you trust that they have valuable ideas to contribute. If you have one or more students who tend to take over science discussions, most groups do, and they're often white males, try not to give them undue preference. Try to give every student opportunities to share, and try to use accepting or neutral responses to all student ideas.
They can put logic into a different perspective.
If a student uses sophisticated or highly scientific language, ask them to explain what they mean so that others can follow the conversation. While it's important to pay attention to patterns experienced by people of different social identities, it's also important to treat each student as an individual and to be aware of assumptions you might be making about their experiences. For example, assuming that a Latino student speaks Spanish, that a person of color is under-resourced, or assuming that two Latino children or two girls would prefer to be paired. Be curious about each student you encounter and provide opportunity for them to express themselves as individuals.
But they want to explore more things or put more evidence into something that has already been exposed to the world.
Ask students to be conscious of who's participating and who's not, and to leave space for those who haven't spoken in the large group to speak up. Ask them to be aware of their own participation, and to move forward if they haven't participated much, or move aside to let others share if they have spoken a lot.
I'm seeing a lot of the same sorts of hands. Can we maybe hear from someone that hasn't shared in the big group in a while?
Let students know you value all their ideas and have high expectations for their participation, because everyone will contribute to building a deeper understanding. Be overt with students about your discussion goals regarding inclusion, equity, and respectful discussion. Before a discussion begins, you may want to discuss with students how they can support one or more of these goals. After the discussion, they can discuss how they did and how they might do better in the future.
And on the other side too. Nice job. Nice job.
Some students grow up with more exposure to academic language at home and through other informal science education opportunities, such as science centers, museums, and after-school programs. This exposure can give them an academic advantage over students with fewer of these kinds of opportunities. Providing practice with the language of science can help students with fewer out-of-school academic language opportunities to avoid a critical struggle with science in later grades. It can also help them to be more academically successful overall.
And then
So first, the carpenters cut it, and then the sapsucker started to cook it, and then the termites came in, started to bite up because we saw the termites' skin, and then I think the white rock fungus did the rest of the job.
Students can benefit greatly from talking about evidence, making explanations, and using language of uncertainty. Engaging in scientific discussions in nature that focus on developing academic language helps all students have the opportunity to be successful in science.